Hello and welcome to Nodes and Biscuits, a Godot game dev podcast. I'm Christoph Klestel, your host, and today I am joined by a co-host, Rafa, or also known as Picster. In this episode, we take a look at some of the features in the latest Godot 4.3 Dev 4 build, on top of diving into a couple of editor features we make heavy use of. Enjoy the show. This episode is going to be a little different. We're going to be looking at Godot engine specifically. And I know that there is something that you're in particular looking forward to having in stable. The latest release was 4.3 Dev 4. That came out not too long ago. I think a week, maybe?
Yeah, last week, I think.
Yeah. So let's head straight into it. What's this feature that you're looking forward to having in stable that's now in Dev 4?
So for me personally, I think it's already in Dev 4, but it's the ability to create web builds with single threading enabled.
Right.
And that means we can finally publish game jam games in a very convenient way on the web without having those problems with Mac OS and the long load times and the shared array buffer stuff that the server has to enable, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's some nasty details. Would you go through the limitations that are there currently in stable?
If you export for web, it will always have, to my knowledge, multi-threading enabled by default. Like if you just download the default build from the website, it will have multi-threading support, which is nice. But the problem is browsers. And most browsers are a bit difficult when it comes to multi-threading. And the web server has to enable it to work. And even then, it's sometimes you have long loading times, to my knowledge.
Right.
So we avoided web exports when working in Godot 4 so far. And that will make it so it just works. Like Godot 3, it works on most machines.
This is a feature that is completely off my radar, right? Because... mainly because whenever I play a game on the web, I don't feel right. I feel like just let me download it and run it off of my computer. But I am aware of being a minority in this, right? Because there's this convenience in just running the game in the web browser. You just open the link and it's running already, right? It just loads and runs. You don't need to do anything extra.
I think you have to press the play button. But apart from that, it just starts. And I think it's, you can like it or not, but for game jam games, it's not too bad if everybody can just play it. You don't have to download weird executables from the internet from people that you don't know. Yeah. That's always something that a lot of people like to avoid. And if people can play your game jam game, then it's not so great. So
yeah, it definitely increases the chances of other people playing them, right?
Yeah,
definitely. Exactly. I was just reminded that in recent times there's been this scam floating about, specifically in game development. Has anyone contacted you regarding it? Regarding them trying to get you to play their game, which is actually a virus?
Yeah, and it was a friend of mine, or let's say a person I know personally. I met last year on the GDC. And so it wasn't too unlikely that it was real. But I heard about the scam before and I was a bit like, I don't think this is real. And then I just told them to... And then I looked up the person's Twitter and it already said, please... Don't answer to my messages on Discord. I've been hacked, and
Right. So you got to see it there. Yeah,
a very targeted scam. It's pretty dangerous.
And it's also the community of game development, right? I think it's a great scam. I think it's a terrible thing that is happening, but I think that whoever came up with it had a great idea here because people in game dev generally like to help one another. So if you manage to get into one person's account, but even if you don't know this person, I've been asked by 3 people that I didn't know at all. And they always said the same thing. Hey, I've got this early prototype. Would you be up for trying it out?
Yeah, it works. It's a smart scam.
Yeah.
But it's really crazy that it's so targeted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The targeted aspect of it, wild. The only reason why I didn't play them is because I've been busy lately, and I was like, I thought to myself, I will play this if it's good. So I asked them to send me a screenshot, and they found two of them. So the first one sent a unique screenshot, but it was super crappy, and I thought, yeah, okay, I don't even see the plausibility of good mechanics here. So I didn't do anything then. And the other two just found a screenshot of a random game from Google. Can you imagine? Hoping to get in there. Oh no.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it's good that people are a bit aware about the risks that you have from just clicking an executable. It was really funny recently. Did you hear about the release of Window Kill?
The release of Window Kill.
Window Kill. It's a game.
It's
a
game
Godot
where you've got
game.
multiple windows, and the game world is
exactly.
happening behind those windows, and those
Yes.
windows are just
Yeah, in the windows, but your desktop is behind it. And it's funny.
Yeah.
I had a short sequence of it in my presentation at the GodotCon. Maybe you remember it from there. And it was now released on Steam, and super successful release. I think it's sitting at 500 plus wish lists at
That's
least.
crazy.
The last time I looked, and it was already a couple of days ago. So now it's probably let's check it. Overwhelmingly positive at 650 reviews. So very nice release.
That's an
Another
excellent
successful Godot game.
Yeah.
And I found it funny. I read the discussions on Steam, and one user was very worried that the game is able to see their desktop. Like,
Oh, no.
is this real? Is this a fake desktop? Is this the real desktop? No, it's the real desktop. But how is the game allowed to see my desktop? And people are like, yeah, you know that every executable that you open basically has more or less not full access to your system, but yeah.
And then suddenly you get introduced to all the horrors that can happen to you when you run something on your
Yeah.
computer. Crazy. Oh, nice. Now, okay, so the feature I am looking forward to the most, right, for 4.3 is, this is going to sound terrible, but it's the graph editor redesign. So there's going to be a full redesign of the graph editor. You'll be able to see it in your when you're using the graph nodes, right? So that's visual shaders mainly. I think that's only visual shaders for now. But I'm just a visual type of a person, and the visuals mean a lot to me also in the editor that I'm using. And I've taken a look at the screenshots of what this is going to look like, and it looked fantastic. Just like a real improvement over the last one.
Do you know if they improved the nodes that do this, or did they just improve the visual shader editor?
To my knowledge, it's mainly about the visuals, right?
No, I mean, if you will build your own stuff with the graph nodes, will they also look fancy now? Or that would be interesting.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Looks like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you build anything using the graph nodes, it's all based on top of that.
Oh, yes. That's
Yeah.
great, because I used the graph nodes in a project a couple of years ago, and I already found them super useful. It's such a underdog feature. It's really cool. And in 3.x, it didn't have automatic sorting. I think that's already in 4 for quite a while now. So you can just sort your layout. And you can even trigger that from a script. So if you build your own stuff using that, you can get a fancy layout, and it has a lot of functionality. So I really enjoyed it.
I agree with you there that it's an underdog feature, because I think that, especially when you're building your own tooling for your own project,
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes there's this level of complexity that where you often go into reinventing the wheel. But with the graph nodes, although sometimes they don't immediately jump at you as the ideal solution, they could potentially be, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can style it. Or maybe you can just build your graph node in some other window that the player doesn't even see. And then
nice.
just take the positions of stuff and use that to align elements in your game. Then just make freestyle 2D elements that look fancy, and you can just use the positions of the graph thing to make it look nicely aligned or something like that. But it's a really cool feature. I love the graph editor.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I'm a big fan also of the fact of how easy Godot makes it to make your own tooling with that feature. Because that's not something, well, okay, I don't have that much experience in other engines, but the fact that you can build your own tool where you are making use of the same graph node tools that the editor itself uses just feels really powerful.
Yeah, that's one thing about Godot that I think everybody agrees that it's amazing. It comes with so many UI elements and so many stuff that is also used in the engine that you can use for your own stuff.
Yeah.
Even like for your game, if you like to make a game about graphs.
Fantastic.
Go for it.
You've got a thing going on for yourself there, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. You know, I recently built a tool which allowed me to see all of the units in my game, the data types, the data of all of my units, and then see what cards are assigned to which unit. And I was thinking for a little bit to do this in the node graph so that the units would be nodes and all of the cards would be nodes and and every card connected to a unit node would be of that unit.
And then you can connect the units to, let's say, the levels, for example. If you have levels that have different units, then you see like a big graph with all the levels laid out and the units that are used by that level.
I love this. You know what? You are making me reconsider going back to the tool and just trying this out. But but it's just the data flows so easily in the node graph. Right, you know what is connected very easily. It's very easy to assign something to an array or grab something from an array and create other nodes based on top of that. So yeah, just a really cool addition, and the fact that it's getting redesigned, so happy because I love looking at nice stuff.
Always. We also get the fancy min-max sliders on the particles.
I've only seen screenshots of that. And the particle editor, you know what? Every time we go into a particle editor together, there's always a little bit of a rant going on. Because the particle editor, it's great. You know, particles are great. But let me just start off by saying this. Every time I show to basically anyone who doesn't use Godot what the process is like to get to a particle node that does just anything. From putting it in the node tree, right? So at the very beginning, you need to add it to your node tree. And then the process of getting to where it at least shows falling meshes with gravity, which is the default, there's just too much. There's just too much stuff that goes on in there.
I think we had the discussion a while ago when I was still more active with particles. And I think there was a proposal, maybe it's still there, about some kind of templates for different nodes. So if you create a particle system, it already comes with a mesh assigned, a basic material assigned, and everything is in there, so you can just start right away.
Yeah.
And I think that is true for quite a lot of things. For example, just creating a cube that has collision is, I don't know how many steps. You have to create the mesh instance, you have to create the mesh, you have to create the collider or the physics body, you have to create, you know the drill. Yeah. And it would be really nice sometime to just click one button and then you can select, like in a script, when you add a new script, you already get this drop down if you want to create like a blank script or if you want to have a template. And something like that for nodes could be really cool.
I agree. If when you're adding something new to your node tree and there was a special tab for templates, right? So that it's very separate, so it's clear. But I think one of the dangers of doing this is when you've got setups which do not necessarily need to be done a specific way, but just for the sake of a template, they are done in a specific way. There's this danger of new users coming to believe that this is the only right way of doing it. It comes with an opinion, right?
Yeah, always. Like every template is opinionated in some kind of way.
You know,
and
because
in Godot you can do a million ways to solve everything. And
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there's this crazy thing every time I think about it, I'm just a little surprised at how different that is in Godot. It's a very cool thing, but also a very dangerous thing. And it's the fact that resources, right, and how they work. So from my previous experience, I always thought that whenever you've got a drop down where you can create a new thing, it's going to be unique. Now in Godot, when I started using Godot, I started encountering more often than not the fact that things were shared, and I didn't know that when it happened, right?
Oh yeah.
Partially UX thing, right? Because nothing is telling you that this thing is also being used anywhere else. In Blender, we both use Blender. In Blender, you've got this little number.
Little
32
icon, yeah.
other things are
That
using
would be
this.
cool.
This data source. Yeah, and what I do like about Godot with this resource thing is the fact that it forces you to think about optimization in a way, right? Because if you know that you're going to have one resource so it gets you thinking, okay, so I've created a similar resource from the get-go 5 times now. Let's just save one of those and reuse it. And there's something about the way Godot works that reminds me of this more often than not.
Yeah, I think the danger, especially as a beginner, often comes when you just duplicate or copy-paste nodes. And then, you have the same particle system, but it's like really the same particle system.
The same.
And if you change something there, it also changes the other. If you get more experience, it's just like muscle memory of making things unique or just knowing that it's the same. But yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I first found out about this, I was making a 3D level. I had cubes with collision boxes. And, of course, it's your first project or one of your first projects. So you're just doing it all in one scene. And I was doing that. And I duplicated those objects, of course. And I zoomed in on one. I edited the collision box, right? Changed it. Zoomed in on the other, edited the collision box. And every time I zoomed in on the next one, I was like, what's this thing doing? Why is it so different? So by the time I get to the last one, I zoom out. And I notice that they're all the same again.
Yeah, that's a good lesson.
That lesson taught me forever. I never forgot afterwards.
Yeah, but it's something you really get used to, I think.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd love to ask you, what's your workflow with these resources? How do you, for example, when you're making, because I'm sure you work a lot with particles. With particles, you get a resource for the particle system, how the particles are supposed to behave, but also for the material. When you're starting a new project, how do you go about structuring it from the get-go?
It depends on the context. For example, if it's a personal project, a really quick project, or a work project at Bits. But even in my private projects, I started to adapt to the same structure that I use at work. One, for the reason that it's a really good structure, but also so I don't have to switch my mindset every time. And so the structure that we have at work is that, for example, we have a folder called content, and the main level of the project. And in content, there are, for example, another folder called monsters. And in there is another folder for walker, let's say that. And in there, everything is located for the walker, including any particle resources, for example.
Okay.
But one thing that I like to do is if it's a shader, then I save it to a different location. I usually have one folder called shaders or wherever it's located. So I have all the shaders in one place and I can use that for a preloader. So
It's very cool. Okay.
But if I would not mind about preloading the shaders, I would also put them in the same folder.
Right.
And if I reuse that shader or that material on a lot of different things, then I would put it in some shared folder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah.
And when you're starting, do you have any archetypes of materials you use for shaders that are almost identical in every project? For me, for example, I always save one material, one shader, the visual shader, for particles, which are unshaded with all of the basic settings that you need for particles and just unshade it, right? And billboard it. I always have this one because I know I'm going to be using that one a lot. Do you have any such saved shaders like that?
No. I just do the same thing over and over and over again.
I'm so happy I asked. Happy I asked because every time I'm doing this, I always think to myself, God damn it, I bet Rafa's got like this great library that he just copy pastes.
No, I don't have anything like that. I think it's such a quick process. It's like a drop down, 2 checkboxes. And oftentimes I want to have control because a lot of times, for example, some particle may not use fog. There's now a checkbox to ignore fog. In the past, you had to subtract that yourself, but now there's a checkbox. So that's nice. But some particles use it, some don't. Then some don't use ambient light. Some use the billboard in a different way. Some maybe are animated or not. So there are so many different cases that I think I would spend more time organizing my little library than just clicking those 4 checkboxes.
I see what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it changes so very often. Yeah.
And if I know it's the same material than something else, then I will just press my little mouse button on the side. I have like 2 thumb buttons. And the top one is assigned to, I don't even remember how it's called. You can bring up like a search box where you can just type things and then you get all the scenes with the name. And I got that on the mouse button.
That's awesome.
And then I just search for whatever, the fancy particle effect scene, and then I just copy the material from there and close it again.
Yeah.
So
and
not
you mean,
super fast, but...
do you mean the menu that only has scenes or the one that has scenes, scripts, resources, everything, right?
Yeah.
I use that menu all the time. It's a lifesaver. Control P. Yeah.
Control P.
Talking about mice, I recently got this super fun looking mouse. Right. So I have 2 mice, right? I use this one when I'm working. It's a trackball. And I use this one when I'm playing, but the reason I got this one is because it's got a joystick.
That's awesome.
It's got a joystick with 4 positions. By default, they're mapped to arrow keys, down, left, right, up. But you can remap it to basically anything you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the MX Master mouse, and it has 2 buttons on the side and a scroll wheel, and also like a little button where you can bring up a special menu from the Logitech software, and there you can put even more shortcuts. It's pretty useful.
Is the Logitech MX Master the one with a vertical and a horizontal scroll wheel?
Yeah, but I almost used just a normal scroll wheel.
Wow, I was thinking about getting that mouse a while ago, but then I decided on the trackball. Right, the trackball is also a Logitech one, but
the
I was
MX
curious
Master
about
is so good.
What?
It's so good. It's the best mouse.
Really?
Yeah, by far.
What's so good about it? Is it the quick menu?
No, the best thing for me personally is first ergonomics. It's just really good for my hand. But I think the best thing is the scroll wheel. Because it's a magnetic scroll wheel. And you have a button on the top, and you can press the button and you can switch between the normal mode, where it feels like a normal scroll wheel. And then you can press the button and it's like free floating. And then you just spin it once and it scrolls super fast.
Not many people know about this who don't have experience with these mice, but I love that on Logitech mice.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's so fast.
Yeah. It's I think the reason why I like it is because in my head, it's a bit of an equivalent to a button on a keyboard that just makes you go all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom super quickly.
Yeah, but you can also just like put your finger back down and stop it in the middle.
Yes,
and I really like that.
It's a really good way of interfacing. Yeah, it does feel badass using that one. I'll agree with you. Right. On to the next thing. Wait, before we go on to the next thing. Right, so you said that when you're creating a new material for the particles and whatnot, it's super quick, right? Even after making those materials for a while, sometimes I forget what is it that I need to trigger in the material, in the base 3D base material, standard material, in order to have the particle material affect its size.
Yeah, there's a checkbox.
Yeah. I think it's a drop down with 3 options or a checkbox.
No, I think it's a checkbox. Keep size or something.
Grow
keep
size,
scale.
I think.
I think it's keep scale.
Keep scale. Yes. And I always think to myself, why am I keeping scale? But then it works. I'm super happy, like, okay, so that's how this works. Right.
But yeah, it's easier if you enable that little checkbox that I recently discovered.
Which one?
The one in the editor settings that disables the folding. I talked about it the last couple of days and I posted on Twitter, and I really enjoy it. I mean, sometimes it's crazy because you see everything, and sometimes everything can be a lot. But it really helps with those kind of checkboxes that are hidden somewhere in a sub menu, and you know that it's somewhere, but you somehow forgot how the title was called of the category, and then you keep looking and scrolling and looking.
I think you said a very interesting thing when you were testing this, which was if you roughly have an idea, right? So you already need some experience with Godot to be able to take advantage of this, right? Because
maybe
I would be worried about cognitive overload, just too much information when you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, but it's probably just because there are a lot of those categories in between that just act as basically labels. And so many times it's just one category for one option. And there are a couple of cool, I'm not sure if it's a PR or proposal that, for example, puts the checkbox in the category. So you immediately see if it's checked or not.
Yeah.
And a lot of good UI ideas to solve those problems. But on the other hand, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's very powerful if you already know your way around the editor and what properties are on which node. But on the other hand, if you're a beginner and you look for those options and you have to check every single
That's true.
category,
Okay. That's
that
what you're
can
saying.
be maybe even worse.
I understand. Yeah. So to my knowledge, it's both. It's a PR and a proposal. I started that proposal because when I was working on the game 2.5 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, there was there was one material that I don't know what it was doing, right? But something was wrong with it. I just couldn't have it. And then I found out that one of the categories in Material Inspector, one of the properties, right, was folded and it was enabled and it was just messing it up. And then it took me a really long time. So right after that happened, I went on to create the proposal. And I'm really happy that basically everyone agreed, right, instantly. That was really cool.
I think there are a couple of things where 90% of the people can agree that something is not great.
Yeah.
And it still takes one person to do it, to implement it, and then to review it, to test it. So even the most simple feature can take quite a while from proposal to implementation to merging it and to having it in stable.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of things that go on for years and years, and everybody agrees that it's super nice and useful. And maybe it's not even complicated, but...
True. Custom resources, exported custom resources was a similar thing. Everyone knew, that was a thing you need to have, but it's just, yeah. Well, I have a question for you, and it's very specific to you. We had a chat a while ago, a real while ago. There's a chance you don't even remember it anymore. And I think you were the one who started it, and it was not just with me, but with other people as well. It was about the tweens, the tween node that used to exist in Godot 3. And at the beginning, I remember that you preferred Godot 3 way of doing tweens, where you had a tween node. Very recently, you mentioned that you now prefer the Godot 4 way.
Yeah.
I'm super curious, would you go into how those preferences changed?
I mean, a lot of it is probably just being used to one thing, and then something changes, and at first you're like defensive about the old thing and you want to keep the old ways. But I think what's most important for me, first, I now work mainly in Godot 4 on a daily basis for, I don't know, at least half a year, where I also work with Godot 4 at work before I used Godot 3 at work for Domekeeper, and also for a couple of private projects. So I was really used to the old way of doing stuff.
Right.
And now working in Godot 4. And last week and this week, I had a couple of days where I had to work in Domekeeper, and I wanted to tween something, just like one thing. And then I noticed, oh God, now I have to add this annoying tween node just for this one thing. And it's so dumb and stupid. And yeah, now also having more experience with how tween works, how you use them in a good way when writing stuff, that sometimes it makes sense to keep a reference to the tween in the script so you can kill it later or pause it or whatever. Like stuff like this, I was just getting used to now. And now I understand the power. I still don't like that the lines have to be so long. That is something I still prefer in Godot 3.
Well, they don't have to be so long, though, do they? You can.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to put set ease, set trans on every tween that you do.
On every. Well, yes, but not on every tweener, right? So you can create the tween, put set ease.
Yeah, of course.
Set trans, yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's so long and it feels a bit cumbersome.
Sometimes, I can agree. Sometimes the tweens, that. I also know that some people do a super long one-liner for tweens, right? Where everything is just one line. And I sometimes do too, but just because I'm feeling a bit lazy and also just experimenting and prototyping, I just want to do it as quickly as possible. And so, I do put that there.
I just noticed I have my mic in the face all the time from my headset, but I don't even use it. So
no, well, Discord is using that one.
Ah, so you hear me now better?
Yes, now I hear you better.
Okay, then I leave it up.
I'm not even using it. I'm not even. I thought that was an intentional setup, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah. All right.
I'm a professional.
And have you? So I don't remember the tweens from Godot 3, but you have a very fresh experience with this. Is there anything that you're doing with tweens in Godot 4 that you otherwise wouldn't do in Godot 3?
I mean, what's really nice is using lambda functions.
Oh,
and callbacks. That is
absolutely
really nice. And it just saves a lot of code sometimes. Because sometimes you just have like one little thing and then you have to write a function for it. And that's annoying.
Yeah.
And
Lambda functions, Lambda function was a thing where I had the opposite reaction to tweens. When I first heard of them, I thought, but why? Why would anyone want a lambda function? First of all, I was intimidated. Someone said lambda, and I thought, what language is this? Why would I be using something that I don't even understand the name of? Right? And I resisted for a really long time until I got into filtering arrays, connecting signals. Right? You can connect a signal, and it's just a quick little function, just like you said. It would be a one-liner, really, but instead you have to make an actual function that's only going to be used by one thing.
Yeah.
So
lambda functions are really nice.
They are.
I mean, I don't nice. Overuse it, but when you need it, it's super nice to have it.
Yeah.
But those have been in since 4.0, I think. Right?
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah, because the big not redesign, but they call it GDScript 2.0, right? Also came out with 4.0 of Godot. That was really there. Yeah.
But we still have new stuff to talk about for Godot 4.
Let's Godot
3.
let's Godot into it.
Yeah. So one thing I saw and I'm really looking forward to are the rendering hooks. I don't know if you saw those.
Yes. Now, I wouldn't know anything about this if I didn't watch Kebabskal's streams. Kebabskal is streaming...
Bastian? Bastian or who?
I'm not sure if his name is Bastian. Bastian or Sebastian? Not sure. but high likelihood. He's from Sweden.
Okay, then it's not the same guy.
No, okay. Pascal on Twitch, and he went from using Unity to using Godot, and he wanted to implement a shader, a screen space shader that changed the visuals of his game, but he was struggling with transparency and things not working the right way, and he did a lot of testing, and he was pushing for this feature a lot because he made his own build of Godot that allowed him specifically to be able to do something similar to rendering hooks. So my understanding of it is limited. You can just you can put your shader into a specific execution moment in the rendering pipeline. Is this what it is?
More or less, yeah. I think that's the gist of it. You can, like there are, like you just said, multiple times where some things happen, for example, transparency. And you can say, I don't want to have my thing at the end, but I want to have it in between two other things happening. And that can be quite powerful because sometimes some effects can be really hard to pull off if you just can put them on at the end. And especially with transparency, it can be quite funny to get the result that you look for without the rendering hooks.
Oh yeah.
And now we have it just by default.
That's
I'm pretty
awesome.
sure I will at some point use it for something.
I can't wait to be in a project or be working on a feature that needs this so that I can try it out. That's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I think the implementation looks really good. Like putting it in the world environment
That's
makes
good.
a lot of sense for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm curious, do you think it'll ever happen that the world environment node, or resource rather, will grow too big?
I don't think it's so big at the moment.
No.
For what it does, it is very capable. It has a lot of features, but I think it's still pretty manageable
Yeah.
from the amount of things in there. But yeah, it does a lot of things.
It
Could
does.
be that at some point maybe it's a bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, I was super happy when I found out that if I'm tweaking the visuals of my game, I just need to go into the world environment resource. That's lovely, especially after finding out about this, after I was using Unity for a while, and in Unity, now this is not to bash Unity. I know that there are reasons for this. This is really, every engine is doing things a little differently, but this was a very pleasant surprise because in Unity, I was never too sure. I was never too certain. Where do I set up an effect? And then in Godot, it just felt like there's this world environment resource, and almost everything is there, apart from the very local things like depth of blur on a camera.
Yeah. I think at some point what could happen, like now this is purely hypothetical, but what could be is that some settings could be moved to another resource from my perspective, for example, fog settings. Because what I encountered a couple of times is that you want to have one certain fog setting at one place of your game, and then you walk through the door and you want to have different settings. And to make some of those settings not for your world, like a world environment, but for areas in your game. And maybe we could come to a point at some point in time in the engine development where some settings are either influenced by another node, for example, an area 3D or whatever, and then it kind of changes the fog. I mean, you can code around it, of course. But some things you can code around. For example, if you are in a room and in this room it's very foggy. For example, let's say there's a lot of dust and you want to use fog for that. Not volumetric fog, normal fog. And then you look out the door into the world and you won't see anything because the fog blocks the sky already. And
I
think to have it like volumetric fog, so it's kind of limited to one area, but then also not volumetric. But that is hard to pull off because in the end, how are you going to measure that? You need to use the depth of the rendering pipeline. So, but yeah, maybe there's a solution. There are a lot of people much smarter than I am. So
Than both of us combined.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And this is such an interesting topic, really, as well, about, because I think this also comes down to the question of, composition and how much of composition, right? Because when you were talking about it, I imagined how cool it would be if there was something like a fog setting override thing that you could attach onto an area, right? And but then when you start doing this, what are all of the things that need to be this as well all of a sudden? Because it needs to be concise.
Yeah, and also it's not too hard to work around it with a script, and I think it makes good sense that not every idea is merged into the engine. If you can work around it with a couple of lines of script, then maybe it's not asked too much to do that.
No.
And
I will be the first to say that I appreciate the fact that that Godot doesn't implement every single idea that gets put onto the proposals. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but I think overall it's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else where you look forward to?
Not look forward to, but something that I'm curious about. Have you noticed this new node called, I think it's Animation Mixer?
No.
No? It's been in Godot.
Node.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just quickly double check. Of course, I've got this running. Where are we here? Animation Mixer. Right. Animation Mixer is a base class for Animation Player and Animation Tree. And you can't instantiate it. Interesting, because... right, so in the playback options of Animation Player, root motion, callback, libraries... Now, I remember this thing being sort of an intermediary, being created as an intermediary, right? So that the Animation Player and Animation Tree, so that there's something in between them, I think. And
it's not a node, it's a class.
It's a base class for both of them.
It's a base class for player and tree, okay.
Yeah.
But then nothing changed, it seems.
No,
it seems that it's
but I think
unstable.
it has an implication, though, that the animation mixer can be put in somewhere, but I don't... Yeah, okay, never mind. I didn't prepare for this one. But I remember there was this conversation based around it where, I don't know if you remember, Juan once asked on Twitter whether people are using Animation Player at all. Right? Or whether everyone is just using the animation tree.
But you need an animation player for the animation tree, right?
Yes, you do. Yeah, and I was under the assumption that the animation mixer was something created as a lightweight version of the animation player so that you don't need an animation player for everything you're doing with the animation tree, which theoretically could make sense if you wanted something much lighter. But yeah, I was mainly curious whether you've got anything that you've tried with the animation mixer, since it's now we know a new class.
I think it's like a base class, like for example, viewport is a base class for the sub viewport or the window. So you can't really do anything on its own, but it's there to give like a basic set of features to animation player and the animation tree.
Yeah, inheritance, right? So that there is no duplicate. If there is duplicate code, you can move it into the base class. Yeah. Right on. Well, apart from this, wait, no, okay. I had my turn. What about you? Anything else that you're looking forward to?
I have to think. I use 4.3 so much.
So you're already using all of the goodness, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. Can't say no to that. Not on the Bip and Bits project, but on engraving. I'm using always the latest dev version because it makes just sense to test stuff in a more serious way.
I was thinking about doing the same on Redemption Railways, but But then I was a little worried about the fact that people were still complaining about corrupted scenes. And
Yeah, but that one got so much better.
Yeah, because I haven't
Yes.
had a single issue with it on Godot 4.2.
I had a lot of those in 4.2, and I even had them in 4.3 Dev 3
Okay.
still. But now with Dev 4, it looks very solid.
That is
I never
very...
had an issue since last week, and I had like multiple weekly. That being said, I use Godot for, I don't know, I would say on average maybe 10 to 12 hours a day. So I really, I asked for it. I asked for those things to happen. And, but yeah, since 4.3 Dev 4, I never had a single corrupted scene.
Incredible. I think that's the main thing to be looking forward to, having it stable, right? I've seen people complain about this a lot. So the fact that this is getting much better,
especially for beginners. Like I had the one experience in my past with Unreal Engine where a project was corrupted from one day to the other. I couldn't open it anymore. All the files are binary. So and it was in 2000... I can't remember, quite a while ago, almost 10 years, I'd say. But I didn't use version control back then. And that was
couldn't go back
for the project. Could put it in the grave. And
that's where it went.
Yeah, recently I thought like, okay, now I'm much more experienced. Maybe now I can fix it. And I managed to fix it somehow. I found out that I used the library to have some more notes in the blueprints, and I worked around it and fixed stuff and yada, yada, yada. But in the end, I could open the project up again. It's not like super perfectly working, but I could open it again, start it, and it ran. I was super proud.
That is
and then
amazing.
I thought, okay, what does it take to port this project to Godot? Because that would be awesome. A cool story.
That's crazy, but I can't even imagine. If it's all binary, how do you even start fixing that? Do you need to go into scripts and make sure that they don't reference something that's broken now? Well, not a script, but yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, thank God for human
readable. I mean, you can't
file.
just open a TSCN file and...
Yeah. But that's a human readable, right? It's not binary, so, you know...
Yeah, it's human readable and text, and it just allows you to fix stuff manually if you want to.
No, yeah.
But also it has a couple of downsides. Not a lot. One that I just a couple of days ago I had it again.
Interesting. What is it?
That was so on engraving. The project was starting pretty slowly. Every time I started it from the editor, I measured it at some point, and it took around 20 seconds until the game was ready.
Nice. And
that was very annoying and very long. So I asked Lisandro, who we also know, Noid Exe, if he has some idea on how to load faster, because he's very experienced with the multi-threaded loading and stuff like that. And he said, yeah, to his knowledge, Godot already uses multi-threading to load resources by default. So maybe it won't help me, but he helped me out a little bit. And then I had some, at least timestamps on what was happening. And then I found out 3 things. And I want to make a YouTube video about it, like a couple of tips to improve your speed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the first thing is, don't have so many scripts open. If you have your script editor and on the left, like this list with scripts, and if there are too many, it will really slow down your project when you run it and when you save it. If you just close all the scripts, you will notice an immediate boost in speed in the editor. It's pretty impressive. If you have a bigger project with a couple of 100 scripts open, then you will immediately notice it. But that wasn't the problem. The next thing is if you have preloads in classes that are referenced in your autoloads, then it will, of course, if you start a game at one of the singleton autoloads, is referencing a class. It doesn't need to be a scene, just a class, a custom class. And in that custom class somewhere, you have a preload that will be parsed and it will be loaded when you run your game. And in my case, in one autoload, I referenced a class, and in this class, I referenced another class, and in that class, I had a preload for the whole game world. That means I run my game, and even if I run a custom scene, even if I run like a simple 2D scene, it takes 10 seconds to load because it loads the whole world.
Are there any advantages to this? Are there any advantages to wanting to do this? You know,
wanting to preload your game world
immediately, right? Can this be in any way used for shaders? I don't think it can, right? They need to be rendered at least once.
They need to be rendered, so it can't really. I mean, I don't know. In that case, I would not recommend it because the world scene is really big in engraving. It's one big world with all the tiles in there, and that just takes a while to load. And sometimes you maybe wrote a tool and you just want to run the tool to, I don't know, parse a file or whatever. And if that tool already, when starting this scene, preloads the whole game, essentially, that's really not very smart. So I removed that, I put it into a load. And then the third thing was, and that really improved the loading time, was that a lot of meshes were still saved as array meshes in the scene files. Like sometimes if you're not careful, maybe you made it unique or stuff like that, and then you have an array mesh in your scene. And that array mesh is just saved as a big, big string inside your scene file.
Oh, okay.
And if it's not binary, so it's much, much bigger than if you save the mesh as a binary file. And in engraving, that put this world and all the scenes that were attached to it to around 150 megabyte. Just the scene files, not the content of the scene, just the TSCN files. So the game, when you run it, loads 150 megabyte, which is mostly meshes.
149.5 megabytes of meshes.
That was super annoying. And I noticed it with a little trick. Maybe you know the program called Tree Size?
No.
It's really good. I would recommend you to check it out. It's a small little tool. You don't need to install it, just an executable. And it shows you like the content of a folder by its size, but including all the folders and the files that are in the next levels of folder structure, something that Windows by default can't do. So you get this nice overview of all the folders, all the files sorted by size of your project.
Oh, nice.
And then you can add a filter. So for example, I can say, tell me, just look for scene files, just look for TSCN files and sort it by size. And then you get all your folders and you see, oh shit, that folder has 150 megabytes. You go into it and you see, my tree has 9 megabytes. And then you can just go either into the file and look which mesh it is, or you can just open your scene if you know what's the cause for it and save the mesh as a binary file.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's much faster. So I improved the loading time of the game from 20 seconds and now it's around 6 seconds.
Wonderful. That is a massive improvement in loading time. How can it happen that instead of having a reference to a mesh, that you've got a what was it, array
mesh? Yeah,
array mesh. How does one get into a situation that they have an array mesh?
Okay, let's for example say you exported your GLB file from Blender and you drag it into a scene, but you need to do something with the mesh. So what you can do is to enable editable children, and then it's all good. But sometimes I don't like to do that if I also add more nodes, because that could later be deleted if I change something. So sometimes I make it local. Then I put in the GLB file, I right click, I say make local. And in that moment, all the meshes are converted to array meshes. Even if you do it on like the main scene node.
Gotcha. So the moment you make it local, everything.
Yeah, and not the mesh. If you just make local like the top level node. And that happens pretty fast. if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. There's this super interesting thing where to me, this whole thing feels like it's based off of the asset workflow, right? Where if you had full certainty that you could put extra nodes in there with editable children and they never disappear, right?
Yeah.
If you...
That would be nice. Editable children is really a double-edged sword.
Oh, it is. It's
nice, but it can also really break your day.
Yeah, I had a similar thing happened with to me with inherited scenes.
Yeah.
However, people have said some pretty nasty stuff about inherited scenes, as in how bad it was for their project. But I must disagree. I actually make use of them a fair amount. And the only thing that I look out for is making sure that I do not delete something on the base level that can have children in the inherited scenes. It's just that one thing. But if there was a warning for this, in that case, it would be all good.
Yeah, I think for inherited and scenes, I totally agree. It's a really nice feature, and I also use it a lot. I can't see any reason why not to. Of course, it has its dangers, but it's really not so bad.
Yeah.
But with meshes, if you export GLB and then, for example, you rename something in Blender, you save it, and boom, something's broken. That's really annoying.
Yeah.
And so I really try, most of the time, I just make stuff local, even if it's like not a great workflow. But if I still have to do something with it, I make it local. Otherwise, I just save it out and put the file in and not touch it again. But
you see, I rarely ever use make local. But when you say this, doesn't it mean that the moment you make it local, you lose the link?
Yeah, you lose the link.
You use So meaning that if you export it again, it doesn't get updated.
No, it doesn't get updated.
Yeah.
But what I would do in that situation, I mean, I only do it if I know that I'm not going to touch it every 5 minutes. If I'm doing it on something where I still iterate a lot, then I usually just put in the file, I link the materials and do the normal proper workflow for importing 3D files. But sometimes if I have more things going on, then I will just save the meshes out as a mesh file, like a binary mesh file from Godot. And if I have to change something, I pull in the mesh, make local, copy the mesh, paste it, and resave it.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, that can be dangerous. I would recommend you to check your scene files with the tree size thing.
I will.
I would bet you will find something that is
I'm super curious at the moment because I created my workflow, my asset pipeline around it being super solid. Right. I never use make local. Rarely ever do I use editable children. And I'm extremely curious about whether there's anything that seeped through the cracks.
It can also be a texture, for example. If you have a texture and by something, sometimes Godot also does it on its own. I never found out when it happens, but sometimes it makes a texture local and then it's also saved in the scene file. And things like that can happen. And I would just recommend to check from time to time. And just go in with resize, check your project, and probably you'll find something that is bigger than it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. I'll definitely get back to you about this as well. I'm curious about the findings, right? Because contrary to your game, my game is super light on the resources, right? You have, I imagine that your most low poly model is my highest poly model, almost.
Oh, no. I have some low poly stuff in there. Some of the older assets. I bet there's a little pebble that only has 16 triangles.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, but it's a pebble. You have pebbles in your game. But yeah, no. And a big shout out to engraving. Definitely anyone listening, go and wishlist that game. It looks stunning.
Yeah, I'm happy with the progress.
Yeah, the progress is awesome. There's one more thing I'd like to go into. A quick thing before we run out of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to lean into?
I bet there are more things in 4.3 that I forgot or that I already got used to that are pretty awesome. So I'm really looking forward to the stable release. There's one bug in the Dev 4 version that is a bit annoying at the moment, but it's already fixed. So it's just not yet in Dev.
Okay, so it's already fixed.
Yeah,
what is the
already
bug?
Fixed. It was about a signal from the audio player that the playback is finished.
Okay.
That signal didn't work, and it messed up my music player, and I was confused by why my music is not playing.
Why?
Why is it not playing? The signal is connected, everything works, but not firing. But
Awesome.
That's why I like to test those dev builds in like a real environment, because you just notice bugs. So anyone listening, if you work on a project that is still in an early production phase where you still allow yourself to switch versions, because I would not recommend it at some point in your project that you should freeze the version that you work on. But if you're still flexible, try out the latest dev builds, try the betas, because it really helps to find bugs. And oftentimes if bugs go into the engine in stable releases, it's just because not enough people tested it.
Yeah, and this really needs to be stressed that there are going to be bugs that aren't found just because people haven't tested the new Godot engine version with a project that's got, a project that they've been working on for a while.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've got a much wider variety of things that you're making use of. And even if you don't want to switch the engine version, just one, like a one-off thing where you just, open it once in the new engine version just to see whether everything's all right. I think that can be extremely valuable to the development of the engine.
Absolutely.
Still.
Because every PR that is being merged is looked at with eagle eyes, but sometimes things just slip through, and it's mostly because not enough people test.
Yeah.
And it's the engine has reached a level where there's just so much going on that if you turn that screw, 100 other things maybe change.
Maybe.
And sometimes those maybes can really break something.
Yeah.
But you had another topic that you wanted to.
Oh yeah, right. I just want to go into this one. I'm out of curiosity, but also because I enjoy it so much, which is the Godot editor theme. Which one are you using?
I'm still using the one that you made.
Ooh, really?
Yes. Of course.
Okay.
I really like it. I want to switch to the one from Picster because everybody is so hyped about it. There's this bug with the latest dev version, and I don't want to spoil my first experience with it. So I wait until either the bug is fixed or the theme is fixed. But yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I agree. So the theme I made, I'll also link it in the description for anyone curious. But the theme I made makes minimal changes to the Godot editor. Just when you look at the resource for the editor theme, there's barely anything in there. There's like, I don't know, 25 lines, I think.
But I like it. It still saves some space and makes everything a bit more, modern. Not super crazy, but...
Yeah. I really leaned into making sure that there aren't any gaps where they don't need to be.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. And second thing is the amount of vertical space you have in long lists, like your file system, your inspector, those things, right? So I reduced that space as well.
That makes such a difference. Just that alone.
Oh my goodness. Couldn't work without
it. Spacing is such a weird topic in Godot. Sometimes everything is cramped into the most smallest space you could somehow come up with. And sometimes everything has a margin of 280 pixels.
Oh yeah.
It's really weird.
But, incredible. And I was curious about whether you've tried Passive Star's theme, but it makes sense because I heard about the bug in 4.3. But there's something with a couple of elements that doesn't align well, and it hides some of the text, right?
Yeah, there was a new PR merged, and I think that PR introduced that problem for this theme. Like, it's not a bug in the engine that you usually see, but with themes, then it can be obvious.
Oh yeah.
And did you, by the way, see the new project manager? That's also in 4.3.
I saw it. I saw screenshots. I haven't used it yet. I remember reading a conversation about the logo. There was a really long conversation about the logo, I think, whether it's supposed to be the top in the middle, and why is there a logo at all?
I don't like that the logo is not like the normal logo version.
Ah, right. It's the minimal weird version, right? It's the single color.
Some other version. I don't think is used anywhere else.
Okay.
It's like an outline version of the logo, and I think they could just use the minimal version of the logo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
the single
just
color.
The blue robot. But that's a bit of a weird decision. But also, that's what I meant in the project manager, which is really nice. The new project manager's a good improvement. But still, it's everything is so cramped. There's not a single pixel wasted. And somehow it's like, why didn't you put in some spacing into the elements, make everything more feel a bit light?
Yeah. I mean UI and UX is crazy, right?
Oh yeah.
There is so much to consider. So much, really.
I'm happy that I don't have to do it.
Well, you do, but in your game.
Sometimes.
I mean, you've got a main menu, don't you? I bet.
Maybe I can get rid of it.
Oh, nice. That's a good idea. Imagine if you turn the game on and just go straight in.
Yeah.
Reads your mind. It knows whether you want to load it or save it. Well, yeah, if you want to load a saved game or not.
Yeah. I will just do everything with a diegetic UI.
Diegetic UI in the main menu. Oh yeah.
Yeah. For the prototype that we work in at Bits, which is still secret, so I can't talk too much about it. But we thought about making the main menu or the settings menu in the game. So you walk over to some kind of opening in the wall, and then you can turn all the buttons and create your settings.
That's really cool.
It's cool, but it's not good.
I agree.
The super small buttons for the accessibility settings. That is super small.
Oh no! Can you imagine?
No, it's just bad design.
And it's way off. It's way off. It's in a different location.
You have to go to the basement for that.
Imagine that. Oh no! Great. Yeah. I'd love to play a test build of that one. But yeah, no, I see the good stuff and I see the bad stuff. But I think in this case, the bad stuff outweighs the good stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the cool factor on that, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes, maybe we can make the main menu in as diegetic as part of the game, and then just the options on the pause menu.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you could certainly do this in engraving, couldn't you?
Yeah, I could use the book. Maybe that's a cool idea.
The book, or the walking, the other dimension, or something.
Yeah, but I think the book would work as a main menu. Maybe that could be cool.
I think that's pretty cool. Ooh. Oh yeah, and the book. The book. Okay, never mind. We'll go off into a whole different topic there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the new project manager. What's your verdict? So apart from it being a bit cramped, too many things in there, not having space to breathe.
I like the new layout. It's just a bit more, how to say it, a bit more logical.
That's good. That's an improvement.
From my feeling. I
Awesome.
think it's just a bit cleaner, and not everything has a button.
Well, does it make you feel, so when you run Godot, right? When you run Godot, the official executable, the first thing you see is the project manager. When you double click, Godot opens up. Do you feel excited to be seeing the project manager?
No.
Oh, come on, show it to me.
No, it's still not exciting. It's better than the old one.
Okay.
But for it to be exciting, I would just redesign the whole thing.
Oh yeah, it would need to be diegetic.
No, it would need to have like a fancy picture of cool games. that cycle through or stuff like that. I don't know.
I see. I see what you're going into in there. Nice.
But yeah, at the end of the day, Godot has a lot of places where you just still feel the roots of the engine.
Absolutely.
And you can feel that there are a lot of people working on the engine that don't have the same mindset as, for example, come on, we make Unreal Engine. It has a different feel. You can notice the roots, and for example, you can run it on an Android device. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi, stuff like that. And I think that shines through in the project manager a little bit. And it's not a bad thing. Like,
no, not many engines can say, you've got a Raspberry Pi, run this, or an Android device with a big enough screen. You can work on the go. I've never tried it myself. I don't know how well it works.
I mean, you can start it on your Steam Deck and make a game on your Steam Deck.
Steam Deck is the best thing that's happened to gamers and game developers in a really long time, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Steam Deck is the best.
Awesome. I still plan. One day I want to make a video series, not a long one, but a series where I develop a game on the Steam Deck using the Steam Deck and then release it on Steam at the end. And the whole process is just on the Steam Deck.
That's
that would
awesome.
Be so cool.
Yeah.
No PCs involved.
Have you got around to connecting the debugging process so that you can run it on the Steam Deck?
I mean, I could run it on the Steam Deck and then start it on the Steam Deck.
Yes.
And then you have like Godot engine running on the Steam Deck. But I could not make a proper debugging connection. I know that it's possible. I know that some people manage to do it. But
I've heard of this too.
I'm not enough of a Linux person for that.
Can you imagine how amazing that would be if there was a button in the Godot editor that would only pop up when you've got a Steam Deck connected?
Yeah,
right? And
would be nice.
Run it on the Steam Deck, will you? And you click that, and then the debug process is connected to the Steam Deck. So cool.
But I think there's something going on to implement that. I'm not sure if it's a button or something like that, but somebody is working on it. I think Remy told me
He ran
about
experiments.
Yeah,
at the very beginning.
I think there's something going on to improve that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
4.4 maybe.
4.4, if not 4.4, then 4.5.
Or Godot 5.
Or Godot 5. And with that, Rafa, I thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks to you. And I'm looking forward to the next episode without me.